Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
So why do we do this to ourselves? Or maybe we can't help ourselves. New study out talking about the effects of social media, kind of indicating a love-hate relationship with all of the platforms, whether we're talking about Meta or Instagram or YouTube. It was a survey conducted by Angus Reid, and it looks at why social media, in some cases, is for good, but also the ills of social media. And a lot of Canadian users are kind of going, I'm on them way too often. And now add to the mix, oh yes, artificial intelligence. What is that going to do to the social media that we utilize on a daily basis? Welcome to In This Economy. My guest today is Professor Richard Lachman from the RTA School of Media at Toronto Metropolitan University. He's got a new book called Digital Wisdom, Searching for Agency in the Age of AI. Professor, thank you very much for joining me.
Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
So what do you think it is? Is it just the addictive nature and the dopamine hits that we get from being on social media, that we just sit there and scroll, doom scroll in some cases? We don't feel good about it, and yet we just can't quit it.
I'm sure this is in no way surprising to your listeners. We have these platforms that we spend so much time on, and yet we have this growing sense of disease. We're worried about privacy. We're worried about being manipulated. We're worried about the state of politics and democracy. We're worried about our teenagers. And yet we are logging in again and again. What I think we really want to start to figure out is not just physiologically what happens here to us, but it's also integrated in society. It is still how we talk to each other sometimes, or how we connect with our friends, or more importantly now, maybe get the joke that's being circulated at the water cooler that you're, around the dinner table. You want to be aware of what's happening in society. And sadly, the only way to do that is through this set of, media tools that we don't like.
Having said that, okay, they list the top benefits. There are benefits to social media. Look, it's helped me keep in touch with all sorts of people that I grew up with. The family and friends, access that I wouldn't know. Maybe some cases I don't really care what other people I've known are doing. Nevertheless, that's one thing. We get entertainment from it. So there are reasons why I'm on there. There are some positives.
Yeah, and I agree. I would suggest that a lot of this, we're probably feeling a bit of a bait and switch. So I don't know how long you've been on some of the platforms, but Facebook's been around since the mid 2000s. The platforms have shifted over time. So that same tool that maybe was how you got in touch with friends from high school and have stayed in touch a little bit, maybe over 10, 15 years now. In the early days, it wasn't as hyper optimized for your attention. It wasn't as antagonistic. It wasn't really pushing rage bait as much. It wasn't as optimized for advertisement. So that human connection, that way of really staying in touch with relatives who are far flung into the countries for free, that thing that made you sort of feel fondly towards it has shifted year by year, platform by platform. And the platform today, Facebook, Instagram, is not the same platform that it was 15 years ago. There is much more a sense that the algorithm is pushing you in certain directions, paying much more attention to everything you click on, how much time you spend, everything else you do on the internet, and really trying to do everything I can to push content at you that keeps you, sort of more addicted. And I do think a lot of us are finding the platforms aren't as good, even at that human connection part. We're sticking around, but it's not the same. We don't feel as fondly about it as we used to. Cory Doctorow, a Canadian writer, he coined the term "shitification." Basically, he's saying these platforms started out for users, started out about that human connection, and over time, they instead are starting to cater to the advertisers. So the tools that are there, the features that are launching are not really for you anymore. And I think anyone who's watching the sort of AI slop, the AI generated videos there, and kind of, you're kind of frowning as you look at it. You're thinking, is this real? I don't even know what's happening in this video anymore. It doesn't feel like it's great. It doesn't feel like the state of the internet is great right now. And that is a change that's happened over time.
Well, misinformation is literally the top, and by a wide margin, negative perception in this Angus Reid survey of social media. It's like 70%. I mean, I'm actually surprised it's not higher. And then you've got, let's face it, X is owned by Elon, who claims that that is the font and source of all, the only real news. But that in and of itself is the problem. It's, it claims to be one thing, but at the end of the day, it's really not. And it takes people who are constantly on these platforms away from maybe legitimate news sources.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the defenders in the companies talk about, the media has always had a point of view. That's not new. As long as it was print media, somebody owns that company, they might favor a particular politician, you would know which paper you got, and that might tell which political party you were in. That is true. But that is not the same thing that's happening when an Elon Musk owns something like Twitter, because even though there was a point of view in older traditional media, it wasn't as blatant. It wasn't as hyper-personalized, and it wasn't as immediately sort of turnaround where there are studies that have tried to look into, does Elon Musk try and push content on Twitter that has to do with Elon Musk? Is he essentially promoting his own tweets to you more than any other person? And the answer seems to be yes. We've lost this, even though there was bias in print media and television and news forever, it still had, a central office that had some protestation of journalistic ethics. If you messed up there, you could have a single campaign. You can sort of push. There could be public interest. There could be government investigations. There was much more sense of accountability, even though there was still a point of view. The accountability in the platforms is really throwing up our hands. On the one side, it's highly personalized. So you may see a particular video. Maybe it's pushed to you and it has some point of view of politics or news or sports or anything. I don't see the same video because the algorithm's giving me a different piece of video. So how do you ever get a mass, number of people up in arms saying this is not okay platform? We as the public think this is not okay when every person is divided, every person seeing their own version of the world.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, because of the way the algorithm works, if you click on one thing, you see more of that same thing. And that's, irrespective of the platform. Facebook's bad for it. Instagram is really bad for it. Twitter is viewed positively by just 24% of users. And yet, in all, the users are on it. I mean, are we even realizing it at a certain point? Do you even realize that you are seeing the same content and it's just making you feel better because it's reinforcing your worldview, I guess?
The parallel I try to make sometimes, and maybe this is why we're still on the platforms despite feeling uneasy about them, is that I draw a parallel to diet, nutrition. So if I know that Doritos are scientifically calculated to try and keep me eating another one and eating another one, I don't feel good while I'm doing it, but there's still something physiological that dynamic is still there. I'm still pulling another one out of the bag. We are aware that maybe some of the content we're consuming is not in our best interests. It's not the best to say everything I get in the world should be exactly what I clicked on last time. I actually need to hear other points of view in order to be part of a good voter in society. I need to get content that maybe isn't candy, isn't just sort of the carefully calculated like sugar. And I'm aware in my diet that I need to have a balanced diet. I'm aware that I need to eat things that aren't my favorite, yet I need to be exposed to them. And we need to start bringing this same sort of point of view to our media consumption. We can't just think, well, I just had 10 minutes to kill waiting for the bus. It's just media entertainment. It's no big deal. Because we know it helps convince me of things. If I see the same piece of content over and over again, it starts to maybe seem less wild, seem less crazy. There's this idea called the Overton window. And the idea is there may be something mainstream society thinks of as totally out there. But if you see a lot of media content about it that's maybe wild and you think that's radical content, I'm never going to see that, but I still saw a little bit of it, it starts to make it a little more acceptable, and it moves from that very far out of the mainstream a little closer. And maybe now there's, sort of a not as extreme media outlet talking about this idea. And that becomes a little closer. And that's how ideas can change. And we're aware that does happen. That is absolutely something that happens when we scroll. There's content you might get that's not your regular media diet, and you might say a year later you're getting a lot of it. You can see the algorithm trying to try things. It shows you a little bit of a video that's maybe not something you usually see, and then 2 videos later it shows another piece of content with that same point of view, maybe that same speaker, maybe that same political content. it's trying you, it's testing you to say, not just did you click on it, but how long did it take you to scroll by? And if it can get you in with this more extreme content, which again, studies have shown we spend more time on, you don't have to agree with it. You might be yelling at your phone, this is ridiculous. Yet that rage keeps you on the video a little bit longer. Helps an advertiser say, I can put my content on this platform because they're sticking around a little bit longer. So it doesn't have to be things we feel good about. It's sometimes things that we feel angry about, but it does change the way we think and believe. So I really do think we need to be both pushing the same level of responsibility to the platforms that we do to food companies, medical companies, and we also need to be aware of ourselves. Maybe what am I going to do in myself, both pushing a platform to be a little bit better and pushing myself to say, what do I need to read, see more widely? That's not just what Elon Musk or any other platform CEO wants to show me.
Well, the Meta has, and I think was it YouTube that lost a court case in New Mexico and another one in Texas, if memory serves. I mean, they were basically found liable. They're protected under certain laws right now in the United States for content, but it sounds like they were comparing those court cases to the big tobacco era when the cigarette companies were found liable for causing health problems, and in this case now I don't know. I'm curious as to see if they actually respond to that.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. So what you're talking about is these platforms have legal protections. In the US, it's called safe harbor provisions. And the idea is they want the free and fair expression. Theoretically, society is better with the free and fair expression of ideas. And they can't tell what you or I are going to post. So the platform is not legally liable if I post something that's a lie or libelous. So in some ways, we'd want to protect that a little bit. We want to be able to show unpopular ideas. I want an activist organization. I want someone speaking truth to power. I want, someone showing a video of, maybe brutality or something. I want that to be able to get out there and not be able to be shut down by maybe a political party or something like that. But at the same time, what the court cases you're talking about, they've taken a different tack. They're trying to say, is the design of the platform unsafe? Is it designed to push either content that is highly addictive, things like infinite scroll, that I can swipe and swipe and swipe, and suddenly it's an hour later, and I don't even know where the time went? Is there something in the design? One of the other court cases was about young people. Is there something in the design of platforms that's pushing content to young people who are maybe a protected class and maybe worthy of more protection? So they're trying these other ways. It's a little worrying in that I want, how do we make sure both are true? I want to be able to protect free content, but I also want to hold platforms liable and responsible. We're seeing other people bringing these cases forward. So as you said, a couple of attorneys general throughout the United States, we have a few more of these cases coming, and the fines are big enough to actually make these very wealthy platforms take notice. There's a collection that's happening. The TDSB in Toronto is one of the groups doing this, where school boards are saying, actually, platforms, you're making it harder for us to do our jobs. You're endangering the mental health of young people, and we as teachers in the classroom then have to deal with cyberbullying or AI sharing of inappropriate content made of young people without their consent. These are things where they're saying, actually, the design of your platforms are harming our ability to be educators. That's sort of a different tack. So these are other ways where we're trying to push a little bit of accountability. I think these court cases are important. I think we need to put a lot of pressure in terms of what's acceptable. We've been getting out of the way of platforms for a long time. And I think part of this is it feels like a government doesn't want to, maybe make young people angry, and maybe young people are on these platforms. There's this sense that these companies are the future. We want to be able to. So, at the same time, the government in Canada was putting pressure on TikTok as a foreign-owned platform. They were still putting their own ads out on TikTok because they felt like it's the best way to get in touch with young people. So they don't want to be seen as being anti the future. Yet it is time for us to put pressure in the governments, to put pressure in regulation and the general public to say we want our platforms to function in different ways. It's the way they function now is not the only way they can function. The way we're describing the infinite scroll in TikTok, the way we're describing the kinds of ways the algorithm pushes content, that's not the only way content can be shared. We've kind of slipped into this way, but we can actually that we can force either through regulation, public pressure, and legal, all three of those, force the platforms to actually take better care of us.
Sounds like, though, we're always running to catch up to all of this. Every new technology, the regulators are always a step behind. And now, I mean, your book is all about artificial intelligence and how this is integrated.
Yeah, you're describing something. So sure, we're talking about this right now. We're starting to have this conversation about social media, and we're starting to see lawsuits, and we're jumping right into the next big technology, which is AI, as if the past 20 years of social media and are changing opinions about it didn't happen at all. So yeah, it's wild, and AI is even worse. You were talking about the Angus Reid survey. Stanford puts out this report card, The State of the AI, and something like 10 to 15% of Americans feel like, only 10 to 15% feel like AI is a good idea. 85% feel like they're very highly worried about AI, whereas the experts, 50, 60% are thinking it's a good idea. What we're seeing is, so you were describing, what do we do about, government and regulation? They always seem to be a step behind. A lot of that's on purpose, right? I don't want my government jumping around very, very quickly. Governments and the courts are supposed to be slow, deliberate, wait and see how something plays out, and then take a step. And that, unfortunately, is very hard in the world of digital technology, which moves, a new release every 6 months. Certainly from the AI platform companies. So what I'm finding, I encountered the same problem in writing a book of this. I didn't want to be out of date 2 months after the book comes out because things move so quickly. What we have to focus on, what I'm writing about and what governments need to look for, are these deeper underlying principles, where it doesn't matter what newest feature is in Instagram. It doesn't matter what newest feature or capability is in the new OpenAI ChatGPT platform or Anthropic. There's some core underlying principles. We don't have to throw up our hands, but we can say things like, we don't have adequate comprehensive privacy legislation in this country. They don't have it in the US. The EU is trying to move there, but it's also moving very slowly and facing pressure. There is no country that has a fantastic comprehensive privacy protection. And if we got one, it would help a lot of the problems we're talking about in AI or in social media. So one of the challenges is that hyper-personalization is why social media is pushing you to outrage, is pushing you to, the design of their platforms. If they weren't allowed to track your personal information in the same way, if they had to maybe reveal to you what they track, if maybe they had, maybe you had to be able to go to the website and see exactly what it thinks about you and where it's seeing it, if it had to get your permission in a different way before it's allowed to track certain features about you. That is a way to force the companies to build the platforms in a different way that end up with fewer negative capabilities. I'll give you one example. If you're using a relatively recent version of, if you have an Apple iPhone, it now asks you when you're using Instagram, do you want to share your location information? Do you want to share certain information? And it will say, this will true in some of the mapping software or other apps. And you can say, allow once, allow when I'm using the app, or allow all the time. That simple button, Meta reported it wiped out tens of millions of dollars of value for them because a lot of people said, no, I don't want to share that. It changed the way the platform was able to track information about people. And when you ask them, they say, no, I would not like to. Now, Meta is still a highly profitable company. It did not go out of business. There's no fire sale. Mark Zuckerberg is not, selling his yachts. They're still making a huge amount of money. But by asking people, just asking them, what are you comfortable in? Apple was able to, position itself as maybe we're a little more consumer friendly. Maybe we're a little more privacy friendly. And if we ask people and they say no, we're going to respect that. And it doesn't destroy the digital economy. It really doesn't. There's a lot of money for these major platforms. It also provides an opportunity. So right now, the CEOs in major platforms feel like they're the capitalist dream. We're building this incredible tool and we're providing service. We're making amazing things, but they're actually very anti-competitive. They don't want a new platform that maybe offers more privacy or maybe offers some features that are more appealing to people. They will buy that company and then just sit on the technology. That's happened again and again from the major tech platforms. They buy a potential competitor that maybe is offering something that's maybe more privacy focused, maybe offering something that maybe allows you to control what you see a little bit more. And then they just put the tech in a vault and keep pushing their main platform.
You write specifically, and I like this quote, we cannot rely on Meta, TikTok, OpenAI, or other tech giants to do the right thing. I mean, they can say we're, just trying to help society. But at the end of the day, Facebook, like you say, they put on different rules and restrictions, and and Apple too. But at the same time, these companies have made more money since doing that.
Yeah, yeah. I want to be very, very clear about this. I don't, we're living in the real world. I don't need the CEO of TikTok to take care of me. I don't need to expect that they will. They run a company. Their job is to make money. But at the same time, I don't want to lionize them as the protectors of society in the future. I don't want to spend a ton of time saying, look how amazing they are, covers of magazines. We all want to be them. They don't need to be nice. Their job is to make a platform that makes money. It's my job to demand more. It's the job of my legislator to job more, to demand more, to keep them honest. They're designing a platform that I can't expect to keep me safe. I can't expect to keep my kids safe. My job is to, talk to my school, is talk to my kids directly. My job is to, sort of make sure there are other alternatives that have, and we have a fair competitive environment where there are actually checks and balances that are there on the outside. And a lot of those have been removed. A lot of those checks and balances were removed because, the politicians either couldn't track it, weren't able to move quickly enough, didn't really understand how the platforms functioned. It changed the business model, so it drove away all the other places like newspapers. The platforms destroyed classified ads, which destroyed the financial model for newspapers, which were a more reliable, more honest way to get news. So we need to know there's a role in society for fair news. There's a role in society for competition. And we need to be more, so antitrust legislation exists in Canada, exists in the US to make sure we as consumers have fair choices. And a lot of that legislation's gone away because somebody has a lot more lobbying dollars than I do, and they know how to put pressure in the Canadian government. They know how to put pressure in the US government. I think we're starting to see a few politicians say, maybe my constituents, maybe the people around know enough about this and care enough about it that it actually can be a voting issue. It can actually be something they care about. It's not weird. It's not, just the providence of geeks somewhere or tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. I think more of us are aware. This is something I don't really agree with. So I can put pressure, and I'm going to have to force the platform in this way. I'm going to have to put pressure on them. They're not going to do it on their own.
And sometimes I will admit, like if I Google something and I see an ad suddenly popping up in Facebook that's tied to what I Google search, so that indicates a cross pollination. I just don't need to see 10 ads of that nature.
I don't want to pretend that this technology is magic. Sometimes it feels obvious. You can feel the manipulation, and the steps to take to make us a little bit safer are obvious. Well, I'll give you one example. Some of your listeners may have kids who play the Roblox game platform, and kids can play games. They can make games for each other. It's aimed at young kids as a social media platform. They a year ago made new measures, or actually in 2024, to make kids under 13 who are on the platform can't just talk to anyone. They can't just be on a chat with anyone. That platform launched in 2006. It has 380 million users every month. It took them 18 years to decide kids under 13 shouldn't be able to chat with anyone on their platform. That's ridiculous. The step they took is a good one. Why did it take them 18 years? It took that long for enough outrage, enough parents groups. The harms that happened in those 18 years are existent. The reports that have said, they described it as like a hellscape of violent content, inappropriate content for kids. It takes us putting this pressure on the platforms, and maybe platforms can come around that, maybe make a different promise. Maybe you're saying, hey, the premise we're making for our platform is we want to be honest. We want to have, we will not take content from this kind of advertiser. We're going to put money into moderation, which will make us less profit. It will buy me less yachts. But my commitment as a company is that I want to be a safer place for young people. I want to be a safer place for your privacy. There are some web browsers that go privacy first. There are a couple of companies. If you don't like Twitter, there's companies like Blue Sky or Mastodon. They're harder to use. They're a little more obscure. They're not the same people, but they're trying to say maybe a nonprofit should run this because maybe there's a role for this kind of communication happening in society, and maybe it shouldn't be profit making. Maybe you shouldn't believe that, or maybe it could be capped in profit, or maybe there are some commitments that have to be there that realize we want to have platforms that have reach. We want to be the place where you can meet your friends and actually share. but we also are aware there's the potential for misuse. And it's not theoretical. Misuse is happening. So what are we doing to support, real competition where we can have platforms that maybe make a different bargain with us? One thing is, you and I might need to pay a little bit sometimes. We get these platforms for free, and I'm sure by now the adage is, if you weren't paying for something, you're the product, you're being sold. If you can pay a little bit of money for a newspaper, you get better content. If you can pay a little bit of money, there's still platforms you can get for free that are run on a co-op model, or run by nonprofits, or run on a decentralized model. So it's not everything, but there is a sense that if you pay, you can actually demand a lot more.
Let's leave it on that. Maybe, I don't know if that's an optimistic note, but we are out of time. Professor, thanks for joining me today on the In This Economy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
That was Professor Richard Lachman from the RTA School of Media, Toronto Metropolitan University, the author of the new book called Digital Wisdom: Searching for Agency in the Age of AI. My name is Mike Eppel. Thank you very much for joining me today on In This Economy. If you want to get in touch with me, my email address, always open. It's mike.eppel@rci.rogers.com. And on social, I'm at Eppman. That's EPPMAN. We'll talk again soon.